In this video, I'm going to share with you the top 9 things I wish I'd known when I started with 3D printing. From the basics to more advanced things I've only recently learned after years in the hobby. So whether you're just getting started or you've been in the hobby for a while now, stay tuned because I have some valuable tips for everybody. Let's get after it. As I write this, it's just after the holiday season, which means that a lot of new people are joining in on the hobby, and as 3D printers continue to get more and more consumer-friendly, our geeky little hobby is moving out of the basement and into the hands of a younger, less technical, and wider audience, which is great. Let me be the first to welcome you to an incredible hobby, and one that will give you so many opportunities for learning, creativity, self-expression, problem-solving, and friendships. By the way, if you're new here, this channel is all about helping you make the most of your 3D printer and other maker tools to create awesome stuff. So consider hitting that subscribe button if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in. Anyways, with so many new people joining the hobby every single day, I got a bit nostalgic recently thinking back on my own journey from beginner to still learning every single day, but definitely very proficient. And I decided to share some of the things that I wish I'd known when I was just starting out. So without any further ado, let's dive in with... You may not know this, but in my previous life, I taught accelerated learning and memory techniques to over 300,000 people worldwide. Basically, I was a professional learner. So when I first became interested in 3D printing as a hobby, as with every hobby, I took the learning part very seriously. In fact, I actually took a great online course on Udemy for like 15 bucks, which introduced me to all the terminology, how everything worked, and so on, before my printer even arrived. Now, I know that you can learn everything online on YouTube or on forums for free, and that's totally fine, but as I always said when I spoke to audiences about online courses, people don't pay for the information because all of that is out there for free. People pay for the curation of that information. They pay because someone has taken the time to curate factual information in the best possible order to learn it, in order to achieve the optimal learning outcome in the minimum amount of time. Look, I know that 3D printers and their accompanying software are becoming more and more user-friendly every single day with fast swap hot ends and mobile apps that take out all the guesswork and so on. And if you really only want to have the bare minimum understanding in order to print the things that you want, say because 3D printing is really only a means to your real hobby like tabletop gaming or building drones, then by all means, don't get bogged down in learning the ins and outs and skip past this chapter in the video. But if you do think that this is a hobby that you'll want to dive deep in, then half the fun is learning and improving your skill set. And while myself and so many other fantastic content creators put out tons of freely available content here on YouTube and elsewhere, the algorithm here doesn't reward us for going into very basic or very specific topics. And while you can learn these things by piecing them together yourself, personally, I feel like I got a real jumpstart on the hobby just by taking a course that put it all together. Now, there are a plethora of great resources out there, both free and paid, ranging from books from my fellow creators Angus at Maker's Muse or Sean, the 3D Print General, but there are also online courses like the one I took on Udemy or the super affordable ones from Joseph Prussia himself. And there are even fantastic free guides out there like the comprehensive Ellis 3D printer tuning guide. I'm definitely not trying to push you towards spending money if you have the time and the patience to actually piece things together and learn on your own using free videos. I love autodidacts. I guess what I'm saying though is that you wouldn't buy a piano and then just try to figure it out on your own, would you? You would treat learning about this new instrument as a part of a bigger hobby, whether that meant books or lessons or just taking the time to find lots of great free YouTube tutorials. 3D printing is no different, so if you want to gain the skills, rather than just getting frustrated and giving up like so many people do, then make sure you invest in your learning. Which leads me to one of the best things about 3D printing as a hobby is that it's a very deep rabbit hole. The minute you learn about one technique or trick or material, you're presented with new challenges, new possibilities, and new frontiers to conquer. This is great because it means you're probably never going to get bored with this hobby. But one thing I wish that I'd known sooner is that the endless rabbit hole doesn't only extend to the learning aspect of 3D printing. It also extends to 3D printers, 3D printer accessories, and 3D printer filament. When I first started out, I bought a pretty crappy printer just to dip my toes into the water. When I realized how much I loved this hobby, I figured I'd invest in one very good 3D printer, and that would be it, right? Pretty soon, I needed a bigger printer for another project. Then I needed an enclosed printer for printing more durable materials. Then I needed a faster printer for, you get the idea. The point is, I've had literally dozens of printers at this point, and I'm still excited about the next big thing, or the next hot upgrade to my existing printers, or. And then there's the filament. There are literally endless colors, dozens of different polymers, and new combinations, formulations, and variations coming out every single day. I've heard psychologists say before that what makes money unique and unnatural is the fact that unlike every other substance in the known universe, there is no level of satiety. No matter how much money you have, you would never mind having a little bit more. That's why it causes so many problems for so many people. Well, I'm here to tell you, friends, that filament is the same way. Even when I have over 130 rolls lining my home office, recording set, and print farm, I'm always yearning for more. I say this not to scare you. After all, every good hobby, from photography to woodworking to exercise to musical instruments, they all have their toys and consumables, and those cost money, and that's fine. It's important for us to invest in things that bring us joy. I say it just to give you a heads up so that you don't naively go into the hobby thinking, I just need 2 printers and 10 rolls, then I'll stop. I mean, maybe you have a less addictive personality than I do, but I'd be willing to bet that no, you're not going to stop. Because something about this hobby, whether it's the rapidly improving technology, the endless innovation in materials, or just the urge to create new and more exciting things, means that too much is never enough. Speaking of creating new and exciting things, let's talk for a minute about upgrading 3D printers. It's a long-running joke that the first 15 or 50 things that you'll 3D print are in fact going to be upgrades and modifications for your 3D printer. And while you might think that this trend would be on the decline with the rise of more polished, closed-source 3D printers, you'd be wrong. People are still printing tons of upgrades to tweak and improve their brand new or even closed ecosystem printers, or even give new life to their older ones. That's great, and if that's your thing, go for it. But one thing that I personally wish I'd known about sooner is the fact that working on 3D printers and actually using them are kind of two different hobbies. Sure, you can partake in both, as I do, but I think that it's valuable to figure out earlier on which side of the hobby you most gravitate to so you can get to it. There are some people who want nothing to do with the mechanics of their 3D printer, and they just want to print stuff out all day long. There are others who spend most, if not all of their time tweaking their printers and designing custom upgrades for them, and rarely if ever print things just for the sake of printing them. Now, both of these things are totally fine, no judgment either way. But I think it's worth taking a moment to ask yourself which one you are. And if you just want to print stuff out, maybe don't get an Ender machine. Whereas if you love the idea of building and tweaking and modifying your printer, maybe skip over the entire Bamboo Lab product line or even over Creality and go directly into the world of Vorons, Rat Rigs, or VZ bots. In the long run, it's going to save you time and money, and I hope it's going to get you into the part of the hobby that brings you joy the fastest. Which leads me to, when you first get into 3D printing, you're almost invariably going to be printing out a lot of models created by other people. That's normal, and it's natural as you get your bearings. But I've heard it said before by many of the experts I respect, and I certainly agree. If you want to get the most out of your 3D printer, you need to learn CAD and to create your own custom models to solve your own problems and express your own ideas. And when you do learn CAD, I just want to exercise a word of caution. choose carefully. Depending on what you want to design, there are right programs and wrong ones for that job. Yes, most programs can do everything, but some tasks are easier than others in each program. When I first was starting out, everyone raved about Blender as the Swiss Army knife of 3D design, but I spent months fiddling with upgrades, non-manifold geometry, and endless headaches just trying to get it to do what I wanted. Simply because, though Blender is great, it's not the best tool out there for the type of design that I wanted to do. And vice versa, there are some types of design that are best done in Blender or similar tools like it. I won't go into this into too much depth because I actually did an entire video about it and why I personally switched to Onshape for most of my modeling needs, which you can check out here. I'll just summarize this point by saying make sure that in your search for the perfect CAD program for you, you take into consideration that the recommendations I or someone else make are going to be highly influenced by the type of modeling that they're actually doing. And of course, their own preferences and workflow. So even if you're going to be doing the same type of modeling as they are, remember that different programs have different workflows for different types of people who think differently. Some people, for example, swear by plasticity for CAD modeling, whereas others prefer the workflow of Fusion 360. Some people love designing things on Shaper 3D on their iPad, whereas others just find Onshape to be much more intuitive. My advice? First, figure out what type of modeling you want to do. Is it sculpting, parametric modeling, or mesh modeling? Then, find the top 2 or 3 programs for that type of modeling and ignore all the rest. From there, try them all out and refer back to point number 1 on investing in learning. Watch tutorials on YouTube or read the user manual. And most importantly, if something isn't intuitive for you, ditch it. Don't be like me, spending months trying to master a tool that just isn't suited for the way that you think and create. There's no shortage of great tools out there, so find the one that is right for you. Another thing there's no shortage of is filament types. When most users start out, they may be a tad bit adventurous, leaving the comforts of PLA for PETG or TPU, maybe even some ABS or ASA. But in my experience, the majority of people stop their exploration there. This is probably because there is a cloud of difficulty and fear around the more exotic filaments like nylon, polycarbonate, TPE, and more. This fear is somewhat justified, and as I've covered in my 3 different filaments and how to use them videos, you do need to meet certain criteria to even try printing them. You can't, for example, print nylons or polycarbonates without an enclosed printer and a heated bed and hot end that reach high enough temperatures. But these days, more and more printers are coming with all those things, and more users are building their own enclosures, upgrading their hot ends, and so on. Ultimately, each one of these different types of exotic materials offers a unique blend of characteristics, whether it be strength or ductility or heat resistance, energy return, and so on. They give you a much wider range of applications and projects far beyond what simple PLA, PETG, and TPU can offer. So personally, I wish that I'd taken the plunge and started playing around with them much sooner, and I'd encourage you to do the same. If you need some guidance, then you should check out the videos that I've done on these different types of exotic and advanced filaments just to get you up to speed. Just make sure that if you're going to get into these exotic and sometimes expensive filaments, Okay, so when you first get into 3D printing, people talk a lot about filament storage and keeping your filament dry, and all that. And like so many, I invested a ton of money into vacuum bags, reusable desiccant, electric pumps, and the works. And all of that is great, but here's the thing. Depending on your climate, that might not be enough. First, I'll preface all this by saying that I live in Israel, where 75% humidity is a pretty much year-round reality. So if you live in the deserts of Arizona, feel free to skip to the next chapter. But one thing I will say is that I wasted a lot of time trying to properly store my filament, fighting off the inevitable. I needed a filament dryer, or at least some way of drying my filament. This is because not only does your filament absorb moisture while it's printing, there's also a small amount of moisture absorbed while it's stored, even if it's in a vacuum bag with desiccant. Now, you might be able to get away with not actually drying your filament if, say, you only print PLA and if you use the roll up in a reasonable amount of time. But as soon as you start accumulating a lot of open rolls or you venture into the more hygroscopic filaments like PETG, TPU, nylon, and polycarbonate, you're gonna need to dry those filaments. There are a lot of ways you can do this, ranging from putting the roll on your printer's hotbed with a box over it, using the built-in filament dryer functionality of your Bamboo Lab printer, or a dedicated toaster oven or food dehydrator that is no longer in use for food. But honestly, it's just so much easier and safer to use a proper filament dryer like this one from Sunlu for a few reasons. First, you have pre-configured settings for each type of filament, so you don't need to try to memorize which filament should be dried at what temperature for how long. Second, you don't run the risk of melting your expensive filament. Third, they allow you to print directly from the dryer even while it's working, which, if you're impatient like me, is really useful. Finally, and this is a feature that I'm pretty sure is unique to Sunlu's new S4 dryer, there's a special mode where you can set the filament to dry for a certain number of hours, and then once it's done, it'll switch to dry box mode, which will only turn on when the humidity reaches a certain threshold, meaning that you can store up to 4 rolls of filament in there forever with very, very minimal power consumption. I've basically resorted to keeping my most hygroscopic and most expensive filaments exclusively in here for the last 3 or 4 months, and from my experience, it keeps them dry much, much better than any dry box or vacuum bag I've used in the past. Now, some people swear by drying their filament after use, but personally, I like to print freshly dried filament for the best possible results. Unfortunately, I can do that with the S4. By the way, just for the sake of disclosure, this video is sponsored by Sunlu, but I actually wrote that entire thing and was going to say it exactly like that about the importance of drying filament either way. Because I do wish I'd invested in a good filament dryer much sooner, and the S4 is easily one of the best, if not the best, filament dryer I've ever used. So thanks to Sunlu, and if you're interested in the S4, it should be on sale now to the general public. You can check out a link in the description. Okay, so we talked a bit about moist filament, and while I don't want this video to morph into a why your prints are failing video, though comment below if that's a video that you would like to see, I do want to talk about another hard-won lesson in 3D printing. It's one that I have mentioned before in my Essential Tools for 3D Printing video, but one that is so important that it bears repeating. Early on in my journey, I would clean my print surfaces with isopropyl alcohol, 70%, or once I started ordering it online, 99%. And that was okay for most surfaces most of the time. But then I got more different print surfaces, textured PEI ones, for example. I experimented with more materials such as PETG, which do a whole lot better with a releasing agent like glue stick. And suddenly, bed adhesion became a real issue. Look, there are different schools of thought out there on the best way to get prints to stick to your print bed. There are people who believe firmly in slathering on glue stick every few prints and topping it up when needed. There are people who believe that as long as you don't touch the print surface with your oily fingers, applying isopropyl alcohol as needed will get the job done. Then there are the people who actually have it right. The ones who know that nothing can replace a high-quality dish soap. Allow me to explain why they're right, though. First of all, a lot of R&D and thought has gone into today's modern print surfaces. People have spent years figuring out how to create a print surface that was incredibly sticky when hot, but released automatically when cooled. Thousands of hours of testing have gone in at Prusa to test the different textured beds to ensure that they strike the right balance between texture and adhesion. My point is, these surfaces, if properly maintained, should adhere pretty damn well. Unless, of course, you're using a specialty material or one that sticks too well, and therefore you need to use glue stick to actually protect the print surface. It stands to reason then that if you properly clean these surfaces, they should have no problems. But the properly part is where people go wrong. Like I said, I've talked about it before, so I won't belabor the point here. I will just say that No amount of isopropyl alcohol, or for that matter, no amount of dollar store dish soap can replace a brand name dish soap with a high quality degreasing agent. I've experienced this firsthand, people. I've paid the price in dozens of failed 3D prints before realizing the cause. There is a reason that brand name dish soaps like Dawn or Palm Olive are household names. Don't be stubborn, don't think you're smarter than the chemists at Procter & Gamble. Just pick up a good, high-quality bottle of whatever the leading brand of dish soap is in your country and thank me later. Which leads me to, if you were an outsider looking in at the 3D printing scene, you could be forgiven for thinking that this is a hobby for loners who get along better with machines than they do people. Its origins lie in a very technical, engineering-heavy discipline, and unlike, say, hot rods, most 3D printers are not super portable, not enough for enthusiasts to lug them out to parking lots and swap meets or cars and coffee every single weekend. And yet, one of the things that you'll quickly discover about 3D printing is just how vibrant of a social scene it really is. There are thriving communities for 3D designers, tabletop gamers, bamboo enthusiasts, Prusa fans. There are Discord servers for individual projects, printers, firmwares. There are even Discord servers where you can hang out with fellow viewers of your favorite YouTube channel. There are even festivals around the world where we geeks muster up the courage to venture out into the real world and attempt to make eye contact with one another. And while some of these spaces can be increasingly toxic with tribal mentalities around specific brands and a few particularly bitter, angry, pathetic losers who just want to make us all as miserable as they are, the vast majority of people in this community, whether you meet them in person or online, are wonderful human beings who just want to share their love and enthusiasm for this hobby and the incredible things that it allows them to create. Personally, a lot of the most incredible benefits that I've enjoyed from this hobby come not from my own printer or even my own designs, but rather from the community. Whether this means collaborating with other people to conceive, share, and remix designs, to reaching out to people with more knowledge than me to solve a particularly annoying problem on one of my printers, or just hanging out with cool people and learning from them. I am really glad that I've taken the time to invest in relationships and getting to know the other people like me in this community. And I only wish that I hadn't waited until I had a YouTube channel behind me to start doing it. So I'd encourage you to start doing the same. Of course, there are a lot of different places that people socialize in this hobby and a lot of places you'll need to check out before you find your tribe. And actually, it might be a really cool video idea to share some of my favorite Discord servers, subreddits, Facebook groups, and mailing lists for all you to check out, so comment below if that's a video that you'd actually watch. But to get you started, do make sure to check out the link in the description to our Discord server, and while you're down there, maybe give a guy a like. So those are my 8 top things that I wish I'd known, but I actually have one more, and it's probably not for everyone, but from experience, I know that a certain percentage of you, like me, will love 3D printing so much that you're gonna want to turn it into a side hustle or even a full-fledged business. Now, whether that means designing your own models full-time on Patreon, running a print farm, or selling your prints on places like Etsy or Shopify. You could even become one of those annoying 3D printer YouTubers. And hey, if you do, that's great. What could be better than doing what you love all day and actually earning a living to do it? Personally, I am super grateful to all of you for empowering me and allowing me to pivot from what I was doing before to this, which I honestly enjoy so much more. But here's the thing, when 3D printing becomes your job, it can be really easy to lose sight of what you love about it. When you're bogged down with invoices, deadlines, meetings, drama with your customers, and machine repairs, you might feel like you took a perfectly good hobby and then stripped all the joy out of it. When that happens, I've learned that I just need to put everything down, walk away from the business side of things, and just 3D print some stuff that has nothing to do with work. Whether that's downloading some of the latest cool models on printables or hopping into Onshape and working on a project that I've been wanting to do for myself. This simple step always prevents me from burning out on the hobby entirely, and it reminds me why I wanted to turn it into a full-time job in the first place. But this is one that I do need to constantly remind myself. As we speak, I actually haven't printed much of anything for like days, so I think I'm gonna go do that. So there you have it, 9 of the biggest things I wish I'd known when I first started 3D printing. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we have great content coming out every single week. A huge thanks to Sunlu for sponsoring this video. I just have to really quickly thank my Patreon supporters and my YouTube members, including my Nylon and Peak members. Chip Cox, 2 Crazy Ketos, Amir Khen, Chris Miller, and Don Arledge. And thanks to all of you for watching and subscribing. It's actually kind of heartbreaking, but around 85% of you who watch these videos aren't subscribed. So if you enjoyed this one, please hit that subscribe button for me, would you? That's all for this week, but I'll see all of you on the next layer.